How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here from GN Tech, and welcome to a camera comparison between the Huawei Mate 30 Pro and the OnePlus 7T. So I'm recording this on the front-facing cameras on both of these smartphones at 1080p resolution, and this has been after both these phones have received quite a fair few updates to improve camera software and hardware. So you can judge not only the quality, the dynamic range and the stabilization, but also the audio that's being picked up by the smartphone. So with that being said, I'm now going to move into the primary camera samples, which will include photos and videos in varying conditions to give you guys an overall idea of which phone does the better job. Before getting to the pictures, let's run down on the phone's camera specifications. The Mate 30 Pro primary setup has 4 cameras compared to the OnePlus 7T's, with the additional depth sensor and 3 times optical zoom. On the front, the Mate 30 Pro again has the higher megapixel count in terms of selfie camera, but keep in mind the price difference between these phones is huge. Starting with this image, it seems to me that the Mate 30 Pro is picking up more detail on the rows. You can see that both phones do a good job of exposing the subject given the shallow depth of field and soft background. In this case, we can also turn to Huawei's AI mode, which turns up the vibrancy a fair bit in the picture, and this feature isn't something the 7T has. Side by side, I'd say the picture from the Mate 30 Pro is better overall. Next is this picture of a Christmas tree. It's fair to say that there's hardly anything to go between these two images, with both accurately processing the blue of the sky. Here too, I wanted to turn to AI mode on the Mate 30 Pro, which definitely gives the image a bit of a pop, but it isn't very significant, and so it's pretty difficult to call a clear winner here. In this next picture though, we start to see a bit more of the difference between these two cameras. The 7T has gone for a brighter, more vibrant look, and if you just looked at these two pictures side by side, you'd definitely pick the one from the OnePlus 7T because it just looks brighter and more vibrant. But the Mate 30 Pro is good in its own right because it was able to better capture the sunlight coming from the left side and sort of present the mood of the picture, which is something that the 7T doesn't do. But in a different situation, it's virtually impossible to tell one photo from the other. The Mate 30 Pro may just have a bit more contrast here, but it's almost negligible if you ask me, so it's interesting how well the 7T is keeping up. Following this is the picture by the sea. If you take a look at the foreground, the Mate 30 Pro's detail, especially on the bridge on the right, is better, but to me there is more sharpness from the 7T's picture. In the background, the 7T warms up the mood of the picture a bit too much for my liking, and for this reason I'd say the Mate 30 Pro has more balance to the picture, but you really can't fault either phone in this situation. With the ultra-wide-angle lens, I think the colors and quality from the 7T are far better. Interestingly, the Mate 30 Pro does not have the same field of view even though it has the 0.6 times ultra-wide lens. Testing for macro photos next, while the OnePlus 7T has a dedicated macro mode, it isn't present on the Mate 30 Pro, which comes as a big surprise, and so this picture of a lock is far better from the 7T in comparison to the Huawei Mate 30 Pro's image. It's also worth testing the zooming capabilities of both of these phones given the difference in optical zoom levels. This picture is at 1 times zoom, and now we've zoomed in 2 times, where the 7T is quite frankly performing better. At 3 times zoom, the Mate 30 Pro and the OnePlus 7T are almost neck and neck, and at 5 times zoom, it's a pretty similar story as well, but you do start to see some extra sharpening from the 7T in this case. At all the way up to 10 times zoom, the Mate 30 Pro is the clear winner, and while this is the maximum the 7T can go, the Mate 30 Pro can go further up to 30 times, which is great. Now let's move to testing portraits. I think both phones hold their own here, both in terms of edge detection and color reproduction. The image from the 7T is slightly warmer, but that's about it. Both these phones also support close-up portraits, giving them a bit more versatility. The sample from the 7T looks to have more detail, and I prefer the tones from it too. The Mate 30 Pro also shows a few edge detection flaws towards my left side, which could be a one-off occurrence, but it is worth pointing out. But I think the choice between the overall looks of both photos comes down to personal preference. From the front camera during the day, we've got selfies. I think it's pretty difficult to call a winner here as both phones are doing great, except for the differences in each photo's color tones. And with portrait mode turned on, again, each phone holds its own really well, and I don't see anyone who takes a lot of selfies having a problem with using either one of these two phones. I think with that, we can now move to nighttime samples. Looking at this picture, the Mate 30 Pro has this green hue to the image, while the 7T goes for a cooler look. Overall, the 7T's image is sharper, but the Mate 30 Pro manages to capture the smallest of details, like the texture on the wall for example. With night mode enabled, I think the balance in the overall picture is better from the Mate 30 Pro. It does a far better job of handling the greens, which is something that OnePlus should work on to compete even more closely to all the flagships out there. Next, we've got this image where the Mate 30 Pro is doing exceptionally well. It has the overall better picture, detailing, and the difference really shows. With night mode too, the way the picture is handled by the Mate 30 Pro is commendable. We've also got this picture of the Burj Khalifa, where I'd give it to the 7T based on the sharpness of the full picture. Using night mode here doesn't yield the best results from either phone if you ask me, but we thought this would be a good way to test the ultra wide angle lens at night. I think both images struggle in this situation, and something to point out is the wider field of view from the 7T, which makes taking a photo like this a lot easier. Although when using the ultra wide angle camera and night mode together, the Mate 30 Pro is quite clearly doing the better job. Over to the front camera at night, the OnePlus 7T takes the more stable looking image. You can choose to use night mode on the Mate 30 Pro, which improves quality a fair bit, but it isn't drastically impressive. Using portrait mode, once again, I feel as though the OnePlus 7T performs better, although it does show a slight blemish in edge detection on the left side of my face. With photos done, here's some video samples. Conventionally, the highest on the market has been 960 FPS slow motion, which the Mate 30 Pro can do easily, whereas the 7T can only go up to 480 FPS. In fact, the Mate 30 Pro can slow down video all the way up to 7680 FPS, which is incredibly useful for filming instantaneous things, although it does suffer from a drop in quality when filming like this. Moving to 1080p video footage from both phones, the Mate 30 Pro is clearly better when it comes to both video quality and stabilization. Using the ultra wide angle lens at 1080p, you get more of a field of view from the 7T, and in terms of quality, both are pretty equal, but again, the Mate 30 Pro seems to be doing a better job with video stabilization. Using the ultra wide angle camera when running seems to yield similar results when it comes to video stabilization, and that's the same when using the regular lens too, which is a shame. To counter this, the OnePlus 7T does come with a super stable mode that drastically improves stability, but we don't find anything like that on the Mate 30 Pro. 4K video on the Mate 30 Pro is not only more stable compared to the 7T, but is also marginally better in terms of quality. However, when running, again, both phones do not offer any sort of impressive stabilization. For the first time on a Huawei device, the Mate 30 Pro also offers 4K 60fps recording, which no doubt crops in a lot more than the OnePlus 7T, but the overall video is far smoother and more stable. In low light, both phones struggle massively, which is slightly disappointing to see, especially from the Mate 30 Pro. This is even more evident when using the ultra wide angle lens, and maybe you could say that the Mate 30 Pro is better, but it isn't anything substantial. 4K footage has a bit more sharpness to it from the Mate 30 Pro, but even so, I expected it to perform a bit better than it's doing. In areas with a bit more light, you can see that the Mate 30 Pro does raise its game, and there's no doubt the Mate 30 Pro is good when it comes to stabilization, but it does leave me wanting a bit more when it comes to video performance, especially in low light. So that wraps up our comparison between the Huawei Mate 30 Pro and the OnePlus 7T. Do let us know what you think in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe for more videos in the future. Thanks for watching, this was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios!